other. So when I learned about, seeing Cutco customers, and like when you're going to go do a service call, a service event, at someone's house, you're almost coming in, like if it's your customer, like obviously you're going to be able to like connect more, but you're coming in as like the service repair, person, right? And so that's like the main thing that you're there to do. And so as you're walking in, it's kind of like, okay, hey, where can we set up? And you're chatting like, oh, how long have you guys lived here, whatever. But like, you also need to like focus on getting over to, where the products are in a normal service call. If it's just a lead recommendation, they want you to sharpen their stuff too. You're like, great, we're going to do that. But the first thing is like, when you're sharpening, you always want to have the person there with you. You don't want them to go, okay, Brooks, here's this. I'm going to go mow the lawn. I'll be back, right? Like you want them with you, like, oh, we're going to walk through. I'll have some questions, just to find out a little bit about what you use, how you use it, and then some tips to keep the knives going and sharpened a lot longer, right? And okay. And so as you're going through, like you're grabbing and you start sharpening, it's like, oh, what do you guys use this for? Which by the way, when you're doing just a Cutco owner, you're going to do a similar thing. You're just not sharpening them. And so going through as you go through the tools and chatting with them about the uses. And then as soon as you're done, then it's like, hey, real quick, I'd love to show you some of the things that could be a really good complement to what you already have, as well as, some of our gifts and accessories that a lot of customers don't even know we have, because sometimes they got shown by a brand new representative and like they didn't know how to show everything. Like they didn't show them the cookware, they didn't show them the flatware, they didn't know about the business gifting or things like that. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, right. And then it's a quick with excuse me, then it's a quick walking through, and if you're a student you still want to share a little bit about your goals, but you're just like, so yeah, I'm actually I'm studying this, I'm working on this, we've got this going on right now, and sharing. And so my goal is to serve 30 plus customers over these weeks. And we'll walk through real quick, and this is what you'll be like, what we're going to do is we're going to make a wish list, all right, which is really important to do that. Even on anyone that's a Cutco customer. So on my service call, even though I sharpened and now I'm going through the book, the one thing that I'm always going to do, no matter what, is you have to go to features and benefits and redo that. I thought when I was newer, oh, they already own Cutco. I don't need to do the value part, right? Like I can just like kind of skip that because they already own it. And then I found out from the professionals, like actually that's the one thing you want to do. Like you don't need to do anything else, really. I mean, you will. But when you go into, you're not going, you didn't need to go through company history. You don't need to go through junk now. It's just like, hey, like obviously, we're made in New York, we make K-bar for the US Marines. We make this here. Everything's guaranteed forever. As far as junk knives, good for you. You don't have a drawer full of this stuff. You got some Cutco. I'm like, but this stuff just costs so much money over time. And then we go to the features and I'm like, so now here there's, I want to remind you why you invested in Cutco. And this is really important because they forget, or they bought it 20 years ago and they're like, I don't remember it being that much, right? Like 25 years ago when I started, by the way, the homemaker was $900. When my grandma bought her homemaker in 1957, I think she paid like $300, right? And that's just like times have changed, just like they used to get a whole tank of gas for like a quarter, like we're in different times, but they'll still have price shock. Got it? If we don't rebuild the value. And that's what I was noticing. Like, oh, wait, I forgot it was that much. I don't know that I could do that right now. Right. So I learned quickly, and so like you have to always rebuild the value. So it's like, hey, let me remind you. And that's the phrase of like, let me remind you of why you invested in Cutco. All right. And so they're like, oh yeah, I'm like, there's 5 features that make Cutco the best. Like, how do you like the handles, by the way? And I'm like, aren't they super comfy? I'm like, so this feature, I'm like the Universal Westlock handle. I'm like, this is a patented feature. I'm like, it's made to. I was like, it costs more money. I'm like, the guy who made it, like, he made like Porsche stick shift. He made like jet fighter, like fighter planes or whatever, like the handles. Like he was Dr. Thomas Lamb was known as like the handle man, and he was actually featured in the 80s. There's an article I used to have it laminated in Forbes magazine about the Cutco handles and saying it was one of the best ergonomics, one of the best examples of ergonomics seen up to date, right? And so like this guy studied hands, okay, and he like was all like he's one of like the godfather in like the ergonomics world. Um, so anyway, I'm like, what's great is I'm like, it costs more money to have that handle. I was like, but it's great because if it's lefties, if it's righties, it's super comfy. It reduces hand fatigue. We've won awards by the Arthritis Foundation. And so people that have arthritis, carpal tunnel, it just makes it really easy where they have a hard time holding stuff. It's really easy because you don't have to put extra pressure. Like it's perfectly balanced. So it's just a lot easier for them to use. Like so even as you get as we continue aging with grace, I'm like, it's really nice, to have those. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, and then the material. I was like, have you ever noticed how it's like almost like a little bit marbleized? And they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, so this material is called it's a resin, right? And so we use thermal resin. It's a more expensive material to use for handles. It's similar to what they use for bowling balls, football helmets, inside of dishwashers, right? It's a very, very sturdy material. It doesn't absorb like any bacteria or like anything. Like it's not porous. And so it'll like look like this 30, 40 years from now. And I said, they'll fade. I was like, but it's still going to be like all perfectly constructed where you see other knives like melting or falling apart or whatever. I'm like, and if anything were to happen, like I definitely had someone like leave it in an oven that was like at 475 degrees or something and part of the thing melted, right? And when you come to New York in the fall to Olean, you'll see they show like people will send back like their handle was like completely melted into the range, their gas range or something. And it's like they mailed the gas range with the thing to get a new one replaced because they couldn't separate it. So you'll see random stuff. But I'm like, this is you can count on this lasting for decades. They made it to last for decades because Cutco doesn't want to be replacing it all the time, right? The third feature you paid for, I'm like, it's just like the actual construction of the knife. And so you know how the blade goes all the way through. I'm like, that's part of the better balance, better support. But also that is the little rivets, okay, that hold them together. The three rivets, those are made of nickel silver and a nickel silver alloy. And Miss Susie, that is a very expensive material to use. It's what they use for like underwater fixtures, plane bolts, things in the air. Like it's an alloy that's really great against pressure. So it doesn't expand or contract. So again, obviously costs a lot more, but it's great because it's never going to come apart. Like this is literally my grandma's knife from 1957 that has not been, actually, no, this is from Elaine Anthony from my church from 1951 because this is before the handle. Like this is the kind of the evolution of handles, just so you guys can see what this looks like through time. You've got your the first iteration of Cutco in 1949 looked like this, by the way. It was a straight edge and a straight handle. All right. Did have the resin material. It looks like wood, but it's not wood. Wood wouldn't look like this 75 years later. But this is a resin material. Then they kind of rounded them out and they added the double D edge a little bit later. Okay. Then we got the first wedge lock handle in 19, I think it was 50, in the mid 1950s. I can't remember the exact year, but we had the first iteration of the handle. Like this is my grandma's knife, by the way, which I did not refurbish to keep it to show. This one is refurbished. So you're going to notice it's the same exact handle. One's been, you can grab it and pass them around. One's been refurbished, so it's all shiny and pretty, and one is literally from 1957. Cool. Nothing's ever happened. It's never been sent back for like anything with the handle. Like it was left as is. Which by the way, like you guys have people have stuff in their house that's like 7 or 8 years old. It's like looks like crap. Like that is from 1957. I think that's impressive as shit. And people are like, "Oh, is that wood?" I'm like, "No, it's not wood. Wood would not look like that." And years later, like it's porous, right? So you've got that handle. And then in 1973, we got the handle that we have now. All right. Now they looked like very retro, right? Because it was in the 70s. They were more reddish. So when you bump into people who had them from the 70s and 80s, they definitely have that. And then they went to the more classic color and then brought out the pearl color. So just so you guys like kind of know. So when you bump into, because sometimes you bump into someone who has Cutco and you're like, that's not Cutco, right? Like when I first saw this, I'm like, that's not Cutco. And they're like, oh, that's Cutco. That's like OG, like 1949 to 1951, Cutco. So anyway, so I share that because these rivets, they don't go anywhere. They don't move like that metal does not expand or contract. So you're not going to ever get the gook around it. It's never going to come out. Where like I've gone to customers' houses and they had like their knife like black duct tape on it to keep it together because like the rivets had fallen out. And so they use like electrical tape on it and they're like, "Hey," I'm like, "What the heck?" And they're like, "The thing fell out." So I just taped it together. I'm like, "Oh my God." All right. But people do it. I had like at least five customers in my career that I saw that had black duct tape like on their knives. I'm like, is this a thing? I'm like, well, I didn't know. And they're like, electrical tape fixes everything. I'm like, okay. So anyway, so I talk about like the rivets, and I'm like, you'll see knives from the 50s and 60s, and like those things have not moved. So there is nothing like you don't have those ring around the rivets, right? And what we're talking about, Brooks, like on a lot of knives, oh, it's very, very visible here. You'll see on all of them, but like you see the ring around the rivets, all right? That's like bacteria and grossness, all right? Some I've seen them like kind of popped out, and you see like all the gunk that's in there because brass and stainless steel, they do expand and contract. And that's why they're not made to put in the dishwasher. You can pass this over to him so he can explore the fun gunk of junk. Um, so anyway, it's just gross. But that's not something that they're gonna get with Cutco, you know. So I tell them, I'm like, it doesn't go anywhere. I'm like, so it costs more money to have that, but like your knife will stay together for the next 50 plus years. I've actually never seen a Cutco knife that like was missing a rivet, right? Then the fourth feature is the actual steel that's used. I'm like, do you remember like why it's so sharp? And so you're like kind of asking them, right? You're like quizzing them. Most of the time, they don't remember anything. But I'm like, do you remember why your knife stays so sharp? The type of steel. I'm like, it's a surgical steel. I'm like, you've got the best of both worlds. It stays super sharp and it stays super clean. And so the 440 grade A is literally what they use for surgical instruments. And by the way, I used to have a letter, and I like in a million moves, you know, lost it a long time ago. But it was my boss, John Hoffenberg, from one of his demos, and it was a letter, like a testimonial that the surgeon wrote. And in this testimonial, he literally was like, you know, I love Cutco. He's at home and be like, I also use it. For autopsy procedures. And he talks about whatever, and he said the long bladed, I mean, this doesn't have the double edge, but the long bladed bread knife is my favorite for very spongy lungs. It gives a nice clean cut. We're going through whatever, but talking about autopsy procedures. And so they use the bread knife to like cut the lungs and like cut stuff. And he's like, it's the same steel. Like, why not? Right. And we're like, what? Like, you're using a bread knife to cut organs? But it is a surgical steel, right? And so I told my customers, I'm like, it's the same steel that's in surgical instruments. Like it's a 440 grade A. It's the highest quality steel that you can get. And you have the best of both worlds. It stays really sharp and it's the most clean steel that you can have. And so you pay more money for Cutco, but again, you're getting the best of the best. So you have the best of both worlds there. And then the last thing, Miss Susie, is the double D edge, right? And I love, oh, I wonder if they like borrowed it to get out, but I had an enlarged double D edge. So when you guys have your book with you, the blue book, so I love showing them this page. I was like, where? Oh, my blue book's right there. But thank you. So when you guys, you know, and explaining to the customer, I'm like, just this right here. Oh, they don't have the big page in here anymore. See, I love the big page, but anyway, you can still show it here. But I'm like, Miss Susie, the reason that your Cutco stays so sharp for so long, where like the average knife is just going to last like a couple years, you know, or when you buy other stuff, you do have to sharpen them every time they're used, is that double D edge. And so as a reminder, like Cutco is not serrated, right? It's three straight edges. It cuts forwards, back, and down, and they're protected by the points. And so the points, I always joke around, I'm like, they're like little bouncers. Like, and they're like protecting the edges and they keep the edges off. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, and then the biggest reason that you paid for Cutco is the guarantee. And to remind you of this, because I bump into Cutco customers all the time that forget, like at any time, by the way, even my best friend, whose house I went to this past week, last Friday, she bought a homemaker, you know, before, and I said something to her. She's like, "Oh, her son used it to do something weird, or he was opening a paint can, or like chipped a little of the tip of the paring knife." And I said, your knives are guaranteed forever. I was like, you can just send it back. They'll replace it. She's like, oh my God, I forgot about that. She's like, I'm obsessed with them, but like I totally forgot they were guaranteed. I was like, yeah, you like literally never have to buy them again. And she was like, oh heck yeah, right? Like people forget. And by the way, she literally like is my best friend and like has heard me say the spiel a million times, and she like forgot they're guaranteed forever. So you're also reminding them. You're like, so Miss Susie, as far as the guarantee goes, a lot of people forget. I'm like, you have a 4-part forever guarantee. I'm like, if it's ever not as like anything is not like up to how you wanted it, send it back. You get them fixed or replaced for free forever. I'm like, the second part is the forever sharpness. You have free sharpening whenever you want. I was like, someone can come to your house and touch them up every couple years. That's free of charge, and it keeps them lasting a lot longer. I was like, you can send them back to the factory at any time. Usually you don't have to do that to like 10 to 15 years. And that's like if you cook 3 times a day, like 5 days a week. But whenever you want, you can send them in. And you always have a sharp knife, right? And you're not having to pay for the sharpening. I think it was yesterday, Ava was saying that her grandfather always buys like a knife, and then it's like a cheaper knife that's like 20 bucks, but then it dulls, and every time he goes to sharpen it, they charge $25 to sharpen the knife. So she's like, he just ends up buying a new one because it's cheaper to buy the $20 knife than to pay for a $25 resharpening. So he's like, I buy a new knife like every like 4 to 6 months. And I was just laughing, like, I mean, there's people that do that. So the third part, I'm like, Miss Susie, is just the unconditional money back. And that's more, let's say you decide to try out some more Cutco today, like and you have the peace of mind that you have 3 weeks to use it, to make sure you love it. And if for any reason you're not happy, you're fully satisfied, you can send that back, and the company's gonna give you 100% refund. And then you have the misuse. Yeah, so that's the 15-day, and the misuse or abuse, which I skipped them. It doesn't matter. I'm like, if your son goes out and is cutting trees with them, or doing other stuff you're not supposed to do, the company still absorbs half the cost. And I say this to my customers, and this is a true statement. I'm like, Miss Susie, I've never had any of my customers be charged in full for anything. I was like, you have to blatantly be like, I ran over the car with it. Like, if you just send it in to like get fixed, the company usually doesn't really ask questions. They just fix it or replace it. I was like, but if you're like, I was opening a paint can and I cracked this, then they're like, all right, we're gonna have to charge you half, because it wasn't made to open paint cans. It's made to cut food. Right. But I just re-walk through that. I'm like, I'd be like, I just wanted to remind you. I was like, because you paid a good amount of money. And I always want to make sure to remind customers why they did that. And they're like, no, thank you. I totally forgot about this. Like, so do that. Right there, you rebuilt the value, right? And so now we can go into like seeing what they like and go into prices without having a huge, sticker shock. You are still going to do the comparison, but it's in a way where it's not like you're not asking for the order on the homemaker is what I'm trying to say, like because they already have whatever, and it just depends what they have, right? But I go through the guarantee and then I go, okay, so let's look at the sets really quick. So here's the tools that you have, or maybe they already have a set. And so this is all going to look different, but I'm like, here's what I'm like, one, I recommend like, most people end up upgrading to the signature or the complete. I'm like, at some point, I'm like, that's the go-to. I was like, because the signature, I mean, if you've got a house and you've got a family and you do a basic amount of cooking or entertaining, I'm like, that's the set that you want to have. Okay. I was like, it has all your basic tools, right? The 7 knives, 2 forks, and a spatula that are in the homemaker. And so I recap, I go, the homemaker has the air knife, right? Which you have, I'm like, it has a small utility for small slicing. You have your sandwich. You have the everyday, the larger utility. You have your turning fork for turning and serving. You've got and so I walk through what they have and what they don't have, and I'm like, oh, you don't have this one. This might be good, or maybe they already have a homemaker set. So again, this goes different routes, but I'm going through and showing them, and I'm like, here's what's missing from being at the signature or at the complete. I was like, and if you're not like a big time cook, why would someone get the complete set if they're not a big time cook? It's usually one of two things. Either one, they have a larger family and there's just a lot of cooking going on. And so there's a lot of people helping. And so you just need more knives, you know? And so we've got 6 people at our house, and now we have people who've married in, and now we've got, there'll be grandkids, and it's like, you cut this, right? And it's Thanksgiving. Like we've got so many, not like I bring so much stuff extra to the house, and I already have a complete set and extra chopping knives and extra spatulas and stuff. But it gets used. I'm like, so that's one situation where someone would buy a complete set, not necessarily because they like to have every specialty tool, but there's just a lot of people in the kitchen helping. And so it's just good to have extra tools. The second reason is just people because it's just the best and it's gorgeous, and like they want to have the top of the line stuff in their house. And I said, but the signature set, I believe every single family should have. I was like, because all it has is your basic cutting tools, the 7 knives and forks and spatula, but then it also brings the heavy duty knife for muscling through tough jobs. And then it also brings your cheese knife, which is used like crazy. I was showing one of the girls yesterday, like you can cut apple slices so thin, like where you like, they're just like potato chips. And so you can thin them and then just, I put them in the oven, like on super low heat for several hours, and it dehydrates them. And we have our own homemade chips. I use it obviously for cheese. I'm a big cheese and wine person. And so if they entertain a lot or have people over, and I show them the difference. And that's where you want to have a cheese knife, by the way, because I'll show them. I said, here, cut this with a trimmer. Our knives are already great. Cut an apple or whatever with the trimmer. And they're like, okay. And they cut it. And I'm like, and now cut it with the cheese knife. And it just like glides. And they're like, whoa. I'm like, yeah, that's because of the holes. It doesn't stick to the starchiness of it, and it glides right through. And they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm like, and then the super shears, which many times they have Cutco owners. That's a popular thing that many people have. But if they don't, I'm like, and then you need the shears. I was like, everybody, I don't know how you don't have the shears, but most people do. And I'm like, so the shears fit in the block. You have the cheese knife, and then it has a smaller chopping knife, which is nice. You have the traditional chef, which I love because when you're going around big onions or bigger things, it makes it a lot easier. And then you have a smaller one for when you're doing like garlic or small herbs, or like, if you and your spouse are cooking together, or you and your kid, you each have like a chopping knife to work on stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Right. But I'm going to say, okay, so here, what we're going to do is we're just going to walk through. I want to go through all the gifts and accessories and make sure that you know. So with the basic set, here's the ones that you have, right? And so this is really good to use. So you've got your basic set, and then what's additional to come in the family set, right? And I call it the signature family set, right? This is, you go to a restaurant, you have your signature dish, similar type things. So you've got your signature family set. That here's what's needed for the complete set. All right. But then going through all the other accessories, right? Like go through the gifts and accessories. I said, Miss Susie, mark down anything that you might want to know prices on. And there's different ways to do this. You'll hear different CSPs teach this differently. This is how I learned it from like the California guys when I went and cross-trained when I was younger. And they just said, as you go through, you're like, hey, we're going to click everything that you want to know prices on. And I love that lingo. And even in my regular demos, when we go through gifts and accessories, I'm like, hey, I'm going to write down anything that catches your eye that you might want to know prices on, because that's a lot less commitment, right? Versus like, what do you want to buy? Like, oh, I don't know if I need, it's like, hey, what would you want prices on? So I can get prices for you, and then you can go from there. So this sheet is fantastic when someone owns Cutco, because it also shows them you don't have everything. Like, have you had customers say, oh, I already have everything? Like, and they like have like a galley, or they have a homemaker. And I'm like, really? We make about $20,000 worth of product. So this has the flatware, the cookware, gadgets, kitchen accessories, sporting honey. So when they see this, I was like, oh, wow, okay, no, I don't have everything, right? So it's right away without you having to say anything. And you're like, oh, let's mark off the things you do have. And then it's like, there's like 10 marks out of like this whole page, it's like, um, and then there had maybe like, I have everything I need. So you go through, and so that's the verbiage I learned and I loved, was just like, hey, anything that you see that you might want to know prices on, let's mark it. I was like, that way we can get you all that at the end, and then we can see, whether for now or for later, whatever kind of deals that we can do, we'll walk through that. They're like, all right, cool. So we go through and do that. And then when you're going to close, now you've got a list of like, you put everything in the cart, and you're going to basically, instead of dropping down from the homemaker and down sets, now we're going to be just dropping down from the list of the stuff that they liked, right? So it's like, Mrs. E, if you just want to knock it all out and you're like, I got my Cutco, I'm set for life, then everything that you liked comes out to 1084. Cool. In addition to what you had, like the basic tools. It's like, I know you like the cookware too, but you don't want to do cook right now. I was like, but 1081. And with that, because you own Cutco, you have two options. You could either get about a $200 discount, or you could get like 300, $30 of whatever you want for free. And pick out some gift sets or something for others. And then like you're upgraded, you've got your stuff. I'm like, I said, here's what that would come out to you, and here's what the deposit would be. Is that something that you'd feel, comfortable with? Or is that something that you guys could feel you could squeeze in, unexpectedly? And so I kind of handle, and those are other like up advanced psychological like closing things, because it's like I'm basically, it's called prefacing an objection, all right, before it comes up. And so I don't want them to be like, oh, we weren't ready for this, or like I wasn't planning on buying today. So it's almost, I say it first, like before they can. And I'm like, hey, is this something you'd feel comfortable squeezing in? I know this was unexpected, or is this something, you're able to squeeze in without having planned? Like, is this something you'd feel comfortable squeezing in with obviously this not being planned? And they're like, so I'm like, yeah, actually, I could do that, right? And they're like, it's a little bit more than I'd want to do today. I'm like, no worries. I said, if we got rid of, what are the things you feel like you'd use the least? And just depending on the list, sometimes it's like, hey, what are the 5 to 7 you feel you'll use the most? Like, it just depends on the list. Part of it too is like their energy. Like as you keep doing this, you learn to read people that are like, oh, I don't really want any of that. I'm like, okay, well, if they're like, I don't need all that. I'm like, well, what are the 4 or 5 things you feel you would use the most that we could get you a cool deal on, right? Or if they're like, oh, I don't know if I need all that. And then I'm like, well, what are the couple things that you could do without for now? Right. And I want to keep the list as big as possible. But if they're just like, oh, I don't want all that, I just want to know prices, then I go to the like, 4 to 5. But if they're like, just, yeah, I don't know if I need all of that, I'm like, well, what are a couple things you feel you could do without for now? I was like, because you could always add those later. And they're like, probably this. I'm like, okay, cool. I go, well, hey, that brings a price to this. I go, and with this, you have 2 options. You could either save, now we're at 732. I was like, you could either save about $140, so we can lower it about another $140. And you're looking at 589 or whatever it is. I was like, the deposit would be this. I said, and you'd get just those tools, or you could pay the deposit for the something like the 179, and you actually could just get that stuff for free. I was like, so would you rather just start with those other tools and do the discount, or buy those and get the other stuff that you wanted for free? And it's so funny because even before, when you were on the whole thing, you're like, we could do a discount, just because they were looking at a bigger number, they're like, no. And I've had people where when I drop down, because here's what I'm like, so you can see it visually on what I'm talking about here. Like, it's like, okay, they picked out $1,000, worth of stuff. And then I told them, hey, we can discount it and, save like $200 or whatever. And this will end up being, 789. Or you could get, $350 of free stuff. So actually, no, normally I say, yeah, $200 off, right? Or you could get $350 of free stuff. And so depending which one, I'm like, the deposit here would come out to about, and I show them, and then the deposit here, and I show them that. And they said like, oh no, I don't need all that. I'm like, all right, well, what are, I said, if you took out, 2 or 3 things that you could do without for now, like which ones would you say? Yeah, scratch those. Right. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, well, now we're looking at, whatever, 743. So you've got 2 options here. One is you could do about $140 off. So you'll end up in the 600-ish range, which the deposit would come out to, about 120 plus tax. I was like, or you could just put the deposit of whatever it was like similar to this, and put this deposit, and you could actually get $250 of free stuff. Which would you prefer? And then they end up going, oh, let's do that one. And I'm like, okay. Which by the way, it was like the same thing as this. But it looks different. It sounded different. It just felt more comfortable to say, you know what, I'll just pay this price and get this stuff for free. Well, guess what they're getting? The same exact thing is over here, but it just feels better, right? So don't like, because I've had reps go, well, I didn't show them this because they already said no to that. I'm like, no, they yes and no. They said no to that. And even though this is almost the same thing, which by the way is like, hey, would you want to buy this today? You with a 15-day, unconditional, like, do you want to purchase this on 5 pay? And then you have a 15-day unconditional money back? Or, hey, Miss Susie, you could pay for it all today, or you could just put a deposit down so you can try it out for 3 weeks, see how you like it, and then go from there. Which would you prefer? Oh yeah, let's just do the deposit. We just literally said the same exact thing, but it was said different ways because the unconditional money back is with the first payment, you have 3 weeks, but it looks or feels more psychologically, it feels more comfortable, right? To hear that, or it feels more comfortable to see that. And you can't forget that closing a sale is all about finding your customer's comfort zone. Got it? So that's really important. So let's recap really quick. You're seeing somebody that owns Cutco. This is the presentation. So you're starting off your rapport and your goal sharing should be the same. Cool. That's all the same. Then we get to the company. Company history is really quick. Just hit on the main points. It's made in New York. It's been made since this, it's been made since that, right? Flip. This stuff right here, I want to remind you, don't buy it. I'm like, and you have Cutco, which is awesome. I'm like, but this is I'm like, this is super unsanitary. These fall apart. I'm like, it's just not good. And honestly, you just end up spending so much more money long term, right? And they're like, oh, okay. I was like, but let me remind you why you spent the money on Cutco and hit that, like we talked about, like hit that hard, the 5 features. And then obviously you're going to have them forever. Anytime, whenever you want, you can always send them back and get them sharpened. They're like, great. And then, Miss Susie, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through all the sets are actually, have you looked at prices lately? Like I know obviously before you did, but like have you looked at prices of cutlery like today, like in today's world? Like as you know, there's inflation, right? Everything goes up. And it's, Cutco is top rated, so we only compare to the best stuff. And so if you walked into today to Williams Sonoma or Macy's or whatever, I said, here's what you're gonna find. And so showing them the Henkels and Wusthof the Wusthof and Schoen, excuse me. And at that point, you'll have people go, oh my gosh, or like, oh, I forgot, or oh wow, right? And then the smallest percentage are the ones that go, oh yeah, I know, right? Because they've been to the store recently. But most people forget like how much like good cutlery costs. So you need to re-bring that up if you want to maximize your sales. Okay. Yesterday I heard seeing someone that had Cutco, and right away the person's like, well, hey, show me this accessories. How much is this? Oh, well, this one's 285. This one's this. And I was like every part of my body was like, you have to do the comparison again. They have to hear that in order to like, if not, they're gonna, oh no, I can't do all that right now. Like you still have to do the comparison. So I'm like, so I'm going to show you, we're going to make a list of everything that you'd want to know prices on, everything you like. But before I do that, have you looked at prices recently? I'm like, it's like anything, right? There's such a wide range. I'm like, if you walked into Macy's or whatever today, here's what you're going to find. These are your top in stores. And then by the way, Miss Susie, these brands have different sets that range in price, just like BMW, right? Has like different grade models and they're all different costs. This is definitely the 7 Series fully loaded, so it's not cheap. This is like top of the line. If you go to a store, that's what you're going to find. I'm like, the great thing with Cutco, I was like, is because it's not in stores. We're actually not even as much as your retail. I'm like, our complete set that's double the knives and guaranteed forever is still less than what you're going to pay in a store retail. And they're like, oh, I'm like, so today, I'm like, just so you know, so it's not, 4,500. It's not this. I'm like, the basic set runs for 1715 now. Cool. So just to give you a gauge. And they're like, oh, okay. So like I said, I'm not asking for the order there if they already have all that, right? Like I'm just like, all right, so let's make a list of everything that you like that you might want to know prices on, and then we'll go through that. And so now we go through, get everything that they like, then we're going to get prices and we're going to drop down from there. Okay. But I still want the two biggest things or I guess 3, I need to connect them to me and why I'm working because that's important for my referrals. I need to rebuild the value. Features and benefits is not something you go quick and fast and skip. It's actually the most important thing when you're seeing a Cutco customer to remind them why they spent the money and rebuild that value. And then the third thing is I'm going to do a comparison and show them what a homemaker costs today. All right. And if they only have 1 or 2 knives, I'm like, is that something you'd want to upgrade to? Obviously, the price would be a little bit different since you already have some Cutco where you could get some really cool deals. with it. But is that a set that you'd want to start with, or possibly something bigger? And we'll go there, because if they just have like one or two pieces, guys, sometimes they'll trade those in. Or I tell them, I'm like, when you get your new ones, I said you can refurbish those and give them as a gift to someone, or you can give away the new ones and just refurbish these and put them into your block. But it's actually the same price to do that, because the set is discounted. Or if we piece it out, you end up spending more, right? I was like, but if not, we could do something with the piecing and try to match it as much as possible. But I always like customers, a lot of people do that, where they'll just like, when those new pieces come, they'll use them for like a wedding gift, or they'll give them to their kid for college, or they'll go through that, right? Also, if you're seeing someone who's middle upper income or upper income, bring up, hey, a lot of people will take their essential set, refrigerate, and put it like in an RV or in a beach house, or give it to their student, to their kid, and then buy a whole set, right? Bree's grandma, when she started her first weekend, Bree's grandma had had a homemaker for a while, and she's like, I really want a signature and I want it in white, and she's like, can she trade it in? I was like, you don't need to trade in, Cutco. And I said, here's what we could do. I was like, we don't need it, but if she wanted to trade it in with you and give it to you as a gift, I said, tell grandma that you can give her like $400 off on the signature, or she could pick out $700 of whatever she wants for free with the signature with steak knives. And I said, as a trade-in, but you keep that homemaker. And she told her grandma, and her grandma was like, perfect. And she was super excited about that, right? Grandma got a $700 credit, which she was excited about. That was probably close to what she paid for her homemaker before. And she felt so good that she was gifting Bree, a homemaker set, that now Bree will always have and be like, this was my grandma's. So that's kind of cool. So don't forget about that too, like legacy program, family programs. And you guys will learn more about this later. And the events team, Sasha, we were talking about, are like, that teaches you so much about all this. Like you just get really, really skilled. Where I would say that our student, I'm going to stop this.